Poland is invoking NATO's Article 4 after multiple Russian drones violated that country's airspace. The article calls for member states to consult one another whenever the territory.
What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. ABC's Christiane Cordero has the latest.
But it hadn't planned to hit any targets in Poland, adding it is prepared to hold consultations with the Polish Defense Ministry on this topic.
What this Russian drone strike down over Poland means, what kind of an escalation are we witnessing?
19 radar tracks, low, slow, and silent, like mosquitoes hugging the treetops. At 11:30 p.m., Polish operators realized those blips weren't random clutter. They were Russian-made drones probing NATO's defenses. The rules of engagement were strict. Firing too soon could mean falling into Moscow's trap. But wait too long and civilian lives were on the line. What happened next wasn't just an interception. It was a message to the Kremlin. This is the story of how Poland's air defense turned a dangerous provocation into a test Moscow never expected. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. Costs you nothing, it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. 19 faint blips appeared at 11:30 p.m. They crept low and sluggish along the border. To the untrained eye, they looked like static on a screen. They weren't. Inside the Polish command room, operators knew what they were seeing. These were not random glitches. They were drones, Russian-made, meant to slip through gaps and test NATO airspace. For a few tense minutes, it was unclear whether to treat them as a real attack or a provocation designed to bait the first shot. The choice was brutal. Fire too early, and Poland risked being painted as the aggressor. Wait too long, and lives on the ground hung in the balance. That's the game Moscow was playing. These drones weren't heavy strike platforms. They were tiny, cheap, stripped-down aircraft hugging the trees like ghosts.
But it hadn't planned to hit any targets in Poland, adding it is prepared to hold consultations with the Polish Defense Ministry on this topic.
In Polish airspace during a large-scale attack on Ukraine.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Moscow says its drones carried out an attack on military facilities in western Ukraine.
And he said he requested invoking NATO's Article 4, which allows NATO members to raise issues for discussion within the bloc.
They carried minimal signatures, often lost against background clutter. Conventional radar struggled to lock them. Think of a swarm of mosquitoes buzzing in a dark room. Hard to see, harder to swat. The threat wasn't their payload. It was the pressure they created. Each drone forced Poland to act, to burn resources on targets barely larger than a bird. Their real mission was to probe response times, map radar grids, and push decision-makers into split-second calls where the wrong choice could escalate into something far bigger. NATO rules left commanders tied. Firing meant risking headlines of reckless escalation. Holding fire meant a test of nerves with Polish skies exposed.
Poland is now invoking Article 4 of the NATO treaty, meaning Poland can call on other NATO countries, including the U.S.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said the organization will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Poland is a member of NATO, the defensive pact, including the U.S., that employs the principle that an attack on one.
At exactly 4:07, hesitation ended. Patriot PAC-3 missile roared skyward and struck the intruder. With that hit, the swarm became more than a nuisance. It was war gaming in real time. Polish crews were no longer watching, they were inside the fight, proving their sensors could track the very threats NATO feared might slip through. But spotting the enemy was only the beginning. The harder question was how to bring them down without ceding the story to Moscow. The drones were never designed to win a battle. They were designed to watch, to provoke, and to force NATO to show its hand. Moscow wanted to read the playbook. Instead, it ended up feeding NATO the kind of raw data no exercise could provide. Every strike, every jam, every wreck was logged into a single integrated network. In minutes, the swarm shifted from being a nuisance to becoming a laboratory of modern war. But the dilemma was sharp. Each missile fired cost far more than the flimsy drone it destroyed. That was the trap. Russia pushed cheap airframes forward, hoping the alliance would waste expensive interceptors. Poland's commanders had to decide where to spend firepower and where to let ground systems carry the weight. They had options. Low-level radar nets tracked signatures most screens would lose. Short-range missile units waited for anything that slipped past the higher-tier batteries. Electronic warfare teams lit up with jammers, blasting out signals that left GPS-fed drones veering off course.
At Syracuse University. Thanks for being with us, Professor. For our viewers, just put into context for us.
For possible help, President Trump is now set to speak to the Polish president, and he posted on Truth Social just a short time ago, quote,
what this Russian drone strike down over Poland means. What kind of an escalation are we witnessing?
What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. ABC's Christiane Cordero has the latest.
NATO planes have engaged potential threats in Allied airspace.
The escalation into Poland happened during a massive attack on Ukraine. Ukraine says Russia launched more than 400 drones and more than 40 missiles,
sometimes spinning helplessly into the dirt. By layering detection, missiles, and electronic disruption, Poland refused to let the swarm dictate the pace. Fighter jets stayed on the sidelines. This wasn't about dogfights. Ground systems, passive strikes, and signal warfare carried the fight instead. Every recovery mission that scooped up drone fragments turned the tables further. Circuit boards, antennas, and battery packs were broken trophies, each one a lesson on Russian design choices. Wreckage was not just debris, it was intelligence. What Moscow hoped would create division did the opposite. The swarm forced countries to coordinate, to link radars, and to refine responses together. In trying to expose weakness, Russia tightened the alliance. What began as a provocation had transformed into real-world preparation. Intelligence, unity, and deterrence replaced chaos. So the question falls to you, if you were in that Polish command center, would you have fired or waited? Comment your choice below. The lesson wasn't about drones. It was about how alliances respond under pressure. A swarm of weak airframes became a test of trust, timing, and coordination. The response showed that strength is not just measured in missiles, but in how nations link their systems and share their risks. Deterrence works when firepower is matched by unity. NATO turned a weakness into an advantage by proving adaptation matters more than cost. That night, Poland didn't stand alone. It stood connected. Subscribe and join a community that seeks to understand modern conflict. And tell us, what would you have done that night?